A South Carolina lawmaker wants child sex offenders to face harsher penalties. The newly filed bill would make those convicted of sex crimes eligible for life in prison or the death penalty.
South Carolina Bureau Chief Shakira Speaks explains why they feel this move is necessary for the state.
It's Representative Jordan Pace's first year in the South Carolina General Assembly. His first shot at change is making the death penalty a consequence for certain sex offenders who victimize children 11 years old or younger.
I've been a pro-life guy for as long as I've been involved in politics, something I ran on. And part of the discussion within kind of these pro-life bills is punishment. We need to actually punish the criminals, not the innocent folks, not the innocent babies. So I wanted to follow through with that. The punishments like this are supposed to be deterrents, and I think they would be.
Current state law hands down a mandatory minimum 25-year sentence with no probation or life sentence. Pace wants to replace that and allow for a life sentence. Under his bill, some criminals would also be eligible for the death penalty for certain sex crimes.
To me, this is step one. I would advocate to expand this all the way through adulthood. I think it would be fitting, whether it's with a minor or with an adult, whether we call it criminal sexual conduct, rape, whatever word you want to use with it, it should be worthy of capital punishment.
Governor Henry McMaster renewed the state's death penalty law last September after a 12-year pause. Pace says the state isn't that tough on crime, but he was happy to file his bill, especially after a 21-year-old Oconee County man was recently charged with second-degree criminal sexual assault. He allegedly entered a home through a minor's bedroom window. Deputies learned during the investigation that the man sexually assaulted the minor and then left the home.
That's the kind of thing that is just absolutely heinous. Life in prison would be a mercy to someone who does that, particularly if it's a repeat offender. So I can understand why they would be hesitant about it, but I think our society is demanding justice, and we haven't gotten it in a long time.
In South Carolina, Shakira Speaks, Queen City News.
All right, well, the bill now sits in the Judiciary Committee, and we are going to take a deeper dive on this. Let's bring in Chief Legal Analyst Collie Frodes on this. So can the state even do this, and do you think this will pass?
Yes. Can the state do it? They can.
Okay.
Do I think it would pass? I think the temperament in the state of South Carolina right now is that they are open to having the appearance of being tougher on crime. And so I think they have a General Assembly that would support something like this. And I think they have a governor and Governor McMaster that would also support something like this. But the ultimate question is, can something like this take effect? Will a person actually be executed if they are even able to implement this type of law? And that answer, I think, would be unequivocally no.
You always want in law for the punishment to fit the crime. How do they go about determining what is appropriate in a situation like this?
That's an excellent question. The Eighth Amendment, that's the only place that you can look. Our Constitution guides us, and our amendments were added on as our country was growing and we were trying to find ourselves and find our footing. And so the Eighth Amendment allowing you to not be subject to cruel and unusual punishment. And so I can only look to what the court has said. You've had a couple of instances where folks have implemented these types of laws. There are 7 states where it was on the books before Louisiana, or before states have tried to do this like South Carolina. And the only one that got there was Louisiana. And the Supreme Court Justice Kennedy said that, listen, as it relates to crimes against individuals, though the death penalty should not be expanded to instances where the victim's life was not taken. And so that clearly is the court saying that unless there is a death of a victim, we don't see that it's being proportionate, where you have that this is something that we can go that far to seeing it being done.
The victim might argue that their life was taken from them with this horrific experience too, though. You know, not in the literal sense, though, what you're saying.
And I would say that the law would ask us to not be creative, but have to be literal. Specifically, if you're saying a life for a life, and the law doesn't say that, but it seems like that's what he's referring to, where he says we're looking for justice, and it seems like we haven't received it yet.
So I actually did my research paper at Clemson University on this very topic in terms of the death penalty, and it's not in terms of taking sides as to how you feel, but when you look at some cases that we hear about, people are exonerated later on. With the death penalty, it's final. You know, there is no coming back. There is no later proving, and I just feel like that's one of the things you have to take in consideration when you talk about the finality of taking somebody's life.
We have to look at how we have evolved as a society first when we just look at the topic in general. Let's look at North Carolina. I handle homicide cases that are capital offenses, and the overwhelming majority of my clients are facing the death penalty, and then the state will decide either to go forward with it or not. And most of the time in Mecklenburg County, for sure, they are very non-death penalty leaning type of county. But if you go back, on the county side, before it was taken over, death penalties were handled at the county level, where you can make a decision in Mecklenburg County if a person was going to die and it would be executed and taken care of now. The state took that away as we've progressed. As you start looking at these types of things, ensuring that you have a crime that's commensurate to that. Death is the standard. There are other states that have things out there like for drug trafficking and hijacking and espionage, where the death penalty is something that can be used as a punishment. But I think even in those instances, the courts would strike them down and would not allow it to
Do you
stick.
think there's a bigger message here of why it was so extreme? I mean, versus actually seeing this
I think
happen? It's more of like, I'm trying to prove a point?
for sure. This is, I want to show that I'm tough on crime, and I don't know much about that official, but I can tell you that now he has the sound bite where I can show, hey, I've already pushed out or tried to push forward legislation that can make our children safe.
Yeah. Khalif Rhodes, good information. Thank you so much.
Khalif.